In this video, you will learn the basic structure and function of noun clauses. A noun clause is another type of subordinate clause that functions as a noun. Essentially, it can do anything a noun can do. It can function as a subject, a predicate nominative, a direct object, an indirect object, or the object of a preposition. Noun clauses have words that serve as common introductory words. Similar to relative pronouns, these words will appear at the beginning of the noun clause, and they're a signal that you have a noun clause. How, that, what, whatever, when, where, whether, which, whichever, who, whoever, whom, whomever, whose, and why. Here's an important note about these introductory words. The presence of these words does not necessarily indicate the presence of a noun clause. Most of these words can perform many other jobs in a sentence. In fact, you'll see some of these words appear as subordinating conjunctions or as relative pronouns, which introduce other types of subordinate clauses. These words can signal that you might have a noun clause. So again, they're a signal, something to look for. The real determinant, however, is how the word group is functioning in the sentence. Just with every other part of grammar, you have to look at the function of the word or word group to figure out what it's really doing in the sentence. So let's look at some examples. Here's an example of a noun clause functioning as the subject of the sentence. In this sentence, how he will build a Lego castle is the subject of the entire sentence. What is his main concern? How he will build a Lego castle. This clause is introduced by how, and it has its own subject and verb. He will build. He will build a Lego castle could stand by itself as a sentence, but because of the presence of the word how, it functions as a subordinate clause. It can't stand by itself. Because of the structure of this particular sentence, we can actually flip the order of it, and we now have that same clause, how he will build a Lego castle, functioning as the predicate nominative. If you remember what predicate nominatives are, these are words that come in the predicate of the sentence, they come after the linking verb, and they identify or rename the subject of the sentence. And usually when we have a predicate nominative, you can just invert the role of the subject in the predicate nominative, which is what is happening here. My son's primary concern was how he will build a Lego castle. So we have the same clause. The clause hasn't changed. He is still the subject of that clause. Will build is still the verb of the subordinate clause. How is still the introductory word. But because this clause now comes after the linking verb, it is now functioning as a predicate nominative. Here's an example of a noun clause functioning as a direct object. He believes that Princess Fiona lives there. That Princess Fiona lives there is the noun clause. He is the subject of the entire sentence. Believes is the verb. What does he believe? That Princess Fiona lives there. That's why it's the direct object. It's receiving the belief. Noun clause is indirect object. He will show whoever is watching his creation. The noun clause is whoever is watching. He will show his creation would be considered the main clause of the sentence. He is the subject, will show is the verb. Creation is the direct object. It is the thing being shown. Who is it being shown to? In this sentence, it's whoever is watching. If the sentence said, he will show me his creation, me is the indirect object. In fact, sometimes substituting a single word for a clause is a useful way of figuring out what the clause is doing. For some reason, clauses, the word groups, can throw us off, and we aren't always sure what they're doing. So sometimes it can be helpful to substitute a more familiar sentence pattern. He will show me his creation. Me is clearly the indirect object there. And it's in the same place, it's doing the same thing as whoever is watching in this particular sentence, which can help us figure out that this clause is functioning as the indirect object. And finally, the noun clause as the object of a preposition. He's also worried about where the dragon will live. Where the dragon will live is the noun clause. That entire word group is the object of the preposition about. He is also worried, if it just said he is also worried about the dragon as a single word would pretty clearly be the object of that preposition. But the same thing is essentially happening here. I just have an entire group of words where the dragon will live instead of the single word dragon. That's why sometimes it helps to underline or even box the noun clauses first, because then you're isolating it and treating it as a group now instead of all of these different words that may throw you off because you're not sure what all those words are doing. Here's your punctuation note about noun clauses. Noun clauses will not be set off from the rest of the sentence with commas because their function as noun clauses makes them essential to the sentence. Here are some practice sentences. In this practice, identify the noun clauses in the sentences below and indicate how each functions in the sentence. If you'd like some extra practice, you could also identify the subject and the verb within each noun clause and circle the noun introductory word. This would be a good time to pause the video, complete the practice, and then restart the video to hear me go over the answers. Number 1, whoever answers the next question correctly will receive extra credit. The word whoever is one of my noun clause introductory words, so that's a signal that I have a word group functioning as a noun. What I need to do is check what it's doing though. What job is it doing in the sentence? If I find the whole word group, whoever answers the next question correctly, then I'm more easily able to see what it's doing because now I've kind of isolated that word group and I'm keeping it together. If I take it away, all I have left is will receive extra credit. Well, who's receiving it? That tells me that whoever answers the next question correctly, that clause is functioning as the subject of this sentence because I don't know who is receiving. Number 2, the teacher will give whoever answers the next question correctly extra credit. So what you see in sentences 1 through 3, you should have already noticed, is basically it's the same sentence, but the clause is doing something different in each sentence. It's moving around. And so I still have the same noun clause, whoever answers the next question correctly, but it's doing something different. Look at the structure of the sentence. Here the subject is teacher, the verb is will give. The teacher will give what is being given? Extra credit. Okay, so what is this word group in the middle doing? This word group in the middle is receiving the extra credit. So the sentence pattern is subject, verb, indirect object, direct object. Therefore, whoever answers the next question correctly is functioning as an indirect object in this particular sentence. Number 3, the teacher will give extra credit to whoever answers the next question correctly. Same noun clause. What's it doing in the sentence? Teacher is the subject. What's being given? Extra credit is the direct object. It's no longer in the indirect object's sentence slot, though. It's moved. In fact, it's moved to behind a preposition, which is a clear indicator that it's functioning as the object of the preposition. If I try the technique of substituting a single word for the clause, it would be clearer. The teacher will give extra credit to her. Single word, clearly the object of the preposition to, doing the same job as this entire word group. All right, number 4 is a little different, and in fact, number 4 has 2 noun clauses. What most people hate to admit is the subject of this clause, is the verb. That they are wrong is the thing that people hate to admit, and it's functioning as the predicate nominative. A good way to double check predicate nominative constructions is to invert the order. That they are wrong is what most people hate to admit. It might sound a little awkward. I guess both of them kind of sound awkward because they're very wordy, but it still makes sense. It's still a complete sentence. So that's a good technique to double check that you have a predicate nominative construction with the linking verb.